This episode offers psychosocial education designed to inspire and motivate our listeners. The information provided does not constitute a therapeutic relationship nor a substitute for professional mental health care. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, call 911, go to your nearest emergency room, or for listeners in the United States, text 988 for the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Warning, this episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Thanks for tuning in to Harvesting Happiness today for a healthy serving of consciously prepared brain food. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen, your host. Since 2010, we've been broadcasting sound ideas for better well-being. Each week, we spotlight diverse thinkers and doers who are contemporary trendsetters and change agents, devoting their lives to creating a better world. I invite you to listen and change how you think about human happiness. Our award-winning content is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining me on today's show, where you will learn about healing loneliness and learn how to love yourself. My guest today is Dr. Margaret Paul. Dr. Paul holds a PhD in psychology and is a member of the Transformational Leadership Council. Margaret has authored 12 books, with her most recent, Lonely No More: The Astonishing Power of Inner Bonding, encapsulating her ongoing dedication to self-healing and personal growth. Margaret's innovative inner bonding process combines psychological and spiritual principles to help individuals achieve emotional freedom and healing. Welcome, Margaret. Thank you for joining me on the show today. This is such a topical subject right now.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Before we get going, I want to mention to our listeners that Dr. Paul is living amidst 4 forest fires, and she has courageously shown up to talk with us in spite of a raspy voice, but it does not detract from your wisdom and what you have to share with us.
Yeah, there's smoke all over the place, and so that's obviously affected my voice, and I appreciate you mentioning that.
Yes. Although I think you sound great. You know, you've got sort of that sultry Lauren Bacall voice, so it's okay.
Okay, good.
Let me just talk for a moment about the U.S. Surgeon General's statement about an epidemic of loneliness in our country and how serious it is and how deleterious it could be to increasing our risks of heart disease, stroke, and developing dementia in our older years. And in citing these statistics, I would also love to have you address the difference between loneliness and being alone and the origins of loneliness.
Well, actually, I would like to distinguish even more, because a lot of people don't understand that there's a major difference between loneliness and aloneness. And aloneness is the feeling we have inside. It's an empty feeling that comes about when we are disconnected from ourselves and we're disconnected from our higher source of love. It comes about when we're basically abandoning and rejecting ourselves with our self-judgments and numbing out with various addictions and just staying focused in our head instead of being present in our body with our feelings and making other people responsible for us rather than learning to take responsibility for ourselves. And so most people have learned to do these as we were growing up, because that's what our parents did. We end up feeling empty and alone. And then we think that we're going to feel better if somebody else connects to us and gives us the love that we're not giving to ourselves. The problem is that we can't really connect to somebody when we're disconnected from ourselves. So I'm sure a lot of people have had the experience of being with people, being with a partner or a crowd of people and feeling lonely and not understanding why do they feel lonely, or being alone and not actually feeling lonely when they're alone. Because I can be alone, but I don't necessarily feel lonely when I'm alone, when I'm connected with myself. But if I'm with either somebody who is disconnected from themselves and therefore can't connect to me, I'm going to feel lonely with them, which is fine. That gives me information that this person is not available to connect to me. But if I'm in a whole group of people and I feel lonely, then I might have to take responsibility for the fact that I'm lonely because I'm disconnected from myself.
And that does happen from time to time. I've experienced it where I've been in a group of people. I think we all have. And we're like, this doesn't feel so good. I'm feeling lonely or even just alone. And then I have to go to the why, right? Have I placed myself in a situation that doesn't align with my interests, my values? Or am I feeling intimidated by the room? I mean, these are the kinds of things that happen to us.
Yeah, and the other thing is that there's two different intentions we can have if we're with a group of people. We can go in to intend to get love, to get approval, to get attention. If that's our intention, we're probably going to feel empty and lonely because we're wanting somebody else to give us what we're not giving to ourselves. Or we can intend to share ourselves, to share our smile, our interest, our listening, our caring. And when you go into a group to share like that, then you're coming from a full place. You're taking care of your own feelings. You're opening to a higher source of love, and you've learned how to bring that in. You're all full of love that you want to share with people. You're not going to be lonely if that's where you are. And even if you start talking to somebody who's not receptive, you'll gracefully move on until you find somebody with whom you can connect, with whom you can actually share positive energy, share love, rather than trying to get it. And trying to get love is so exhausting. People don't know.
Yes.
They don't realize how much energy they spend trying to do everything right and say everything right and look right and tell people about themselves that will impress them. It's just really exhausting. Whereas when we've learned to see and listen to and value who we are, and we've learned to tap into this sea of love that we live in. We live in a sea of love, and we learn to tap into it and fill ourselves up with it. And then we're in the position to want to share it. And that's a completely different experience.
So when we talk about an epidemic of loneliness, do you attribute this overwhelming sense of loneliness on a national level because of the temperature that I'm going to use the United States as the example, the temperature of the country? People are not able to connect on an authentic level. People are in fear. So they're not allowing themselves to be seen, or they're fearful that if they were seen, that we wouldn't want to be connected to that person, or somebody wouldn't want to be connected to me.
Yeah.
Is this what's going on? I mean, I'm a little confused.
So I think a lot of things are going on. I think that with COVID, obviously people got scared to be with other people, and a lot of people ended up being alone and ending up being fearful of getting sick, fearful of reaching out. But underneath the epidemic of loneliness is the epidemic of aloneness, which is most people have not learned to connect to themselves in a loving way. Most people have not learned to know who they are on a soul level and truly value the beauty that they are. Most people think there may be something wrong with them, and they don't want people to see that. Most of us grew up with parents or caregivers who didn't know how to love and value themselves, so they didn't know how to role model loving and valuing us. And that's the real epidemic, is the self-abandonment that is just rampant, not only in the United States, but in the world. It's rampant. And unless people decide that they really want to learn to take responsibility for their own pain, their own joy, rather than being victims, rather than expecting somebody else to do it for them, rather than looking for a relationship where they can get love and get approval and get validation, but do their inner work so that they're looking for a relationship to learn and grow and share love and share joy and share fun with somebody. Most people just don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And that's why bringing inner bonding, and I mean, I've been, Dr. Erica Chopich, who's the co-creator of Inner Bonding, and I have been evolving this process for 40 years. And it is such a powerful process for learning to love yourself, learning to learn who you really are in your soul, not who you are in your ego, but who you are in your soul and your heart, and to learn to connect whatever your belief system is about spirit. People, I've worked with people who don't believe in anything. And I say, well, just open to the air and ask what's loving to you. And they start to get ideas about what's loving to them or loving to others. And then they eventually know that there is a source there of love and wisdom and truth and peace and joy that we can tap into and learn to love ourselves, because we don't have role models for loving ourselves. It's not about, it's not just about taking a bath or getting your nails done or getting a massage. It's really about learning to get present in your body with your feelings and take responsibility for them, and learning what it means to take that responsibility. Most people have never seen that.
Let me jump in here for a second and ask you about the concept of enoughness or being enough. That's for some of us, embracing that we are just fabulous the way we are, warts and all, imperfection. That is a big step in adulting or being healthy within one's self or consciousness. When you can look in the mirror and say, pretty good, maybe not perfect, but pretty darn good.
Yeah. So, but one of the problems is that we live in a society that defines us so much externally.
Yeah.
Defines by how we look, defines us by our weight, by our accomplishments, by how much money we have, by where we live, by what race we are, by what gender we are. All these external ways of defining ourselves, but who we really are is a soul. And this soul is a unique expression of the divine. And when you really get into experiencing that, you experience that we are all one. We are all one loving energy, and we are each a unique expression of that. And that there's no way, as a unique expression of the divine, that we are not enough. And so, people would get older and they look in the mirror and, oh my God, I've got these wrinkles, and, I don't have as much money as I used to, or I'm not as attractive. And they're defining themselves by externals.
Yes. Well, definitely. Yeah. The ultimate worth has nothing to do with the external, right? I mean, this is the vessel that holds the goods, and the goods are something different than the ego or even the body. We're going to need to take a break. And when we come back, I would love to talk with you about the relationship of our negativity addiction and how this affects loneliness, because this is something that people don't often think of, that we are the manufacturers of some of this chaos. But first, let's take that pause. My guest today is Dr. Margaret Paul. She is the author of Lonely No More, The Astonishing Power of Inner Bonding. To learn more, you can go to innerbonding.com. You can also learn about Dr. Paul at margaretpaul.com. And on all the social channels, you can find Dr. Paul at either Margaret Paul or Inner Bonding. Here comes that pause. We'll be right back. Harvesting Happiness is rooted in science. Our work facilitates applied positive psychology practices through media and consulting. We're committed to sound ideas for better well-being, leading to increased life satisfaction and a better world for everyone. We're not into pseudoscience or quick fixes. We're focused on common sense backed by rigorous research. Healthy critical thinking is the foundation for our discussions. We encourage you to challenge preconceptions and explore ideas with a curiously discerning mind. Collaboration with our guests is united by an inclusive vision to boost resilience, critical thinking, communication, and problem solving through civilized discourse and pleasurable relational engagement for everyone. Each day, we have the intellectual freedom to be happy or the liberty to be miserable, regardless of external circumstances. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, please seek support because good psychological health is vital to the achievement of a healthy and satisfying life. Visit harvestinghappiness.com for psychosocial and educational services that boost emotional and social intelligence. And we're back continuing the conversation with Dr. Margaret Paul. We're talking about her book, Lonely No More, The Astonishing Power of Inner Bonding. Let's get back to the conversation. So, Margaret, I think we can all agree that today's society is pretty negative in so many ways. And in fact, many of us humans have a negativity addiction. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, virtually all of us grew up having to develop what we call in inner bonding the wounded self, the ego wounded self. And this is a part of us that's actually located in the lower left part of the brain where the fight or flight mechanism is. This part is filled with fear and false beliefs. And that's where the negativity comes from. And so, if you grew up being told that you weren't good enough, or you were stupid, or you were ugly, or you're a failure, or nobody will ever love you, or whatever it is, or you were neglected, or you were physically or sexually abused, verbally abused. There's so many ways that we can get hurt. Growing up, we were bullied. We were humiliated by a teacher. We were told by a religious leader how bad we are. And so these are all stored here. And the thing that's so exciting to me about inner bonding is that there's only two intentions possible. There's the intention to learn about loving yourself and sharing your love with others. And then there's the intention to protect against pain with various forms of controlling behavior. And that's what the negativity is. This wounded self is completely devoted to trying to have control over getting love, avoiding pain, and feeling safe. And it uses all the negativity that it absorbed, because we absorbed the woundedness of our parents, our society, the media, we absorbed it all. And so that wounded self may be creating so much chaos in your life with the addiction to negativity by telling you, hey, you better not make a mistake. You better do it perfectly. If only you're perfect enough, then people will like you. If they don't like you, you're not good enough. So you better toe the line. You better say the right thing. You better lose some weight. You better look right. On and
Sounds
on.
exhausting. Just hearing it is tiring.
Yeah, it is. And so for most people, they unconsciously have the intention to control rather than the intention to learn about loving themselves. And as soon as they are in that intention to control, that ego wounded part is going to go at them with these false beliefs, with this negativity, to try and have control over getting them to do things right so that they can be a success and so that people will like them and then they'll be okay. And of course, what that does is create anxiety and depression and guilt and shame and anger and aloneness and emptiness and jealousy and all the things people are suffering from. And they don't realize that they're suffering from these feelings because of how they're treating themselves, because of what they're telling themselves from that wounded part of themselves.
Let me ask you a question about narcissism and self-love, because it's often thought when we say the words, love, I need to learn to love myself, or I need to have self-love, that there is a narcissistic thread to that. And I don't believe that to be true. I just know that is what is often said.
Yeah, narcissism is actually the opposite of self-love. Narcissism, unfortunately, starts quite early. It's a self-absorbed. People are self-absorbed, but they're quite fragile. They're quite insecure. They're trying to get love. They're trying to get validation. They're trying to get affirmation. They're trying to have control over that. They are resistant to doing the work of learning to take responsibility for themselves. Loving ourselves does not mean that we're selfish or self-absorbed. When we're truly loving ourselves and getting to know who we are in our soul, it makes it very easy for us to see who others are in their souls. And the more we fill ourselves with love, the more we want to give, the more we want to share, the more we care about others. We have to truly care about ourselves, have compassion and empathy for ourselves in order to truly care and have compassion and empathy for others. Narcissists are incapable of empathy. It's missing within them. So it's completely different than truly learning to take responsibility for yourself so that you're in a position to share love.
Let me just ask you a question going back to narcissism and the inability to possess empathy. They know how to act empathetic.
Yes,
Narcissists are very clever.
Yes. Yes. And so they'll have cognitive empathy.
Yes.
They'll know what to say. They'll know what to do to kind of pull you in. They'll know what you want to hear. They'll actually tune into how you're abandoning yourself and give you exactly what they know you need that you're not giving to yourself and what you want to hear. But they don't have the capacity to feel true empathy, which is that you can feel the other person's feelings. You can actually feel it and care about the effect that your behavior has on others. Narcissists, because they can't feel it, because they can learn it in their mind.
Yeah. It's a cognitive thing, but it's not a feeling thing.
That's right. And so they become very good at that and very good at pulling people in with that, but it's not true empathy.
Let's talk a little bit about the inner bonding protocol or process, because this might be very helpful to some of our listeners who struggle with this. And I think we all struggle with it from time to time. The older we get, the more comfortable in our skin we hopefully become, but it is a struggle for many.
Yeah, so inner bonding is a 6-step pathway that anybody can learn, and I'll briefly go through it. Step 1 is learning to be present in your body, because your feelings are in your body. I call it having your inner baby monitor on. And it's like if you have a baby, you don't just leave the baby and go out to lunch. You want to hear the baby cry so you can attend. So step 1 is having your inner baby monitor on, being present in your body, wanting responsibility for your feelings. Step 2 is consciously moving into your heart, consciously opening to learning about loving yourself, starting with yourself so you can eventually love others, and learning to invite in the beautiful qualities of spirit, the love, compassion, the grace, the wisdom, the strength, the truth of spirit into our heart, so that for that moment, we become a loving adult. We're a loving adult when we're open and connected to our higher source. And then in step 3, if in step 1 you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling depressed, or you're feeling angry, you go back into the feelings and you explore. But you explore from what you're doing, basically. What am I telling you from my wounded self? Am I judging you? Am I numbing you out? Am I ignoring you? Am I giving you away to others? What am I doing that's making you feel anxious or depressed or angry or guilty or shamed? Or what's happening between me and another that may be creating some loneliness or grief or heartbreak or sorrow or helplessness over them, because there are these existential feelings of life that we don't create. But we do create so many of our own feelings, either by treating ourselves badly physically, eating junk food, which can cause anxiety and depression in the brain, or by abandoning ourselves emotionally. And so we're exploring that, and we're exploring the beliefs that are causing this. And this is how we become aware of the beliefs that may be running our lives. And once we become aware of that, in step 4, we're opening to a higher guidance. And this can be whatever it is for a person, an older, wiser part of themselves, or Jesus, or their concept of God, or nature, whatever it is that works for them. But they're opening to something greater than their own mind. And they're asking 2 questions. What is the truth by any of the false beliefs? What is the truth about any of the false beliefs that I've uncovered? And what would be loving to me? What would be loving to my soul? What do I need to do right now so that I feel loved inside? And with practice, you start getting this information, really powerful information. And then step 5 is doing it. It's like if a baby cries, you don't just say, oh, the baby's crying. You pick up the baby, you try and figure out whether the baby is hungry or needs a diaper change or just needs to be rocked. And we do the same thing with ourselves. What do we need? And then we take the action. And then we go in and evaluate again in step 6, how am I feeling now? And if we took a loving action, we're going to feel so much relief. We're going to feel relief of anxiety, depression, guilt, shame, anger, all of these feelings, because we're bringing in love and we're taking loving action for ourselves. So this is a very brief overview of the 6-step pathway of inner bonding. It's extremely powerful. When people learn it, it's completely changed my life, my health, everything about how I used to live my life before inner bonding.
It's a very rational roadmap. I mean, you're giving us some very specific tests.
Right.
And I would imagine, just as you were going through the steps, I was thinking, well, maybe the action is less action. And oftentimes when we're really hypercritical, it's the doing less where we find the soothing and the relief. That's
right. I mean, there's no cookie cutter action. It can be to sit down. It can be to take a nap. It can be to, not schedule so much. It can be to just pick up a dollar stuffed animal and hold that like you would hold a beloved baby. There could be so many different things. Yeah. It could be speaking up to somebody that you've been, rolling over to somebody trying to control you, and now you're going to speak up and say something about it and start taking care of yourself in a relationship. It could be changing jobs. I mean, there's so many different things that it could be. But, like if a child comes to you and says, I'm hungry, and you say, oh, thank you for sharing, and you don't get food, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Take action for ourselves.
It's the action, the self-advocacy, and the self-honoring.
That's right. That's exactly right.
We are out of time, and I would love for our listeners to learn more about the work of Dr. Margaret Paul to go to innerbonding.com or margaretpaul.com to learn more. The book we're talking about today is Lonely No More, The Astonishing Power of Inner Bonding. You can find Dr. Paul and Inner Bonding all over the internet on pretty much every social channel, including YouTube. And Dr. Paul, I really appreciate you coming here, especially under the circumstances of the raspiness and the climate emergency in your area. So I hope you remain safe, and thank you again for coming.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness today. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen on behalf of my guest, Dr. Margaret Paul, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of actions. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Please go out and rock your day, and remember to be kind to one another. Want to explore more sound ideas for better well-being? Check out our new bonus edition content at More Mental Fitness by Harvesting Happiness on Substack and Medium. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Connect with and follow us on most social media channels. To learn more about lifestyle management and mental fitness consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Harvesting Happiness and More Mental Fitness are produced by Lisa Cypers Kamen, Andrea Mengele, Robin Boyd, Andrea Daly, and the excellent team at Podfly Productions, including Eric Begay, Kimberly Beck, and Alec Guess, in collaboration with TogiNet Radio, KBUU, RadioMalibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.